This program, of course, is presented by Pro Wrestling Illustrated, the most widely read, widely sold, and respected wrestling magazine in the world today.
This is the Pro Wrestling Illustrated Podcast. I'm your host, PWI senior writer Al Castle. Back once again, going to be joined in just a moment by my co-host, Brian Solomon. We've got lots to discuss. It's the first we've talked since AEW's big All Out show. So we talk a bit about our thoughts on that. A show that, as we go into more detail, maybe didn't receive as much universal praise as most AEW big pay-per-view shows do. And we give our own thoughts on the show. And then also we chat a bit about the controversy coming out recently with WWE's decision to kind of crack down on third-party endorsement deals, kind of outside business dealings, side hustles, maybe you want to call them, that some of the talent has. There was a big backlash about that, whether with some folks wondering whether WWE may be overstepping their authority, considering that their talent are, at least supposedly, independent contractors. And Brian and I talk about kind of the pros and cons, maybe trying to look at it from WWE's point of view, what their concerns are, maybe what's behind this, and was there a better way to handle this. And spoiler alert, yes, we both think there was a better way to handle it. And then we got a fun discussion. Our guest this week comes from the independent wrestling world, and he is the owner, proprietor of the East Coast Wrestling Association, the ECWA. And this coming Saturday, September 19th in New Jersey, they're hosting the 24th annual ECWA Super 8 tournament. Now, if you're a fan of independent wrestling, or really wrestling in general over the last 30 years, the Super 8 tournament should very much be on your radar. One of the most kind of storied and prestigious wrestling tournaments in the independent scene. If you look at who the winners have been over the years, not just the winners, but the participants, it really reads like a who's who of future wrestling stars. They really have had an eye for, again, the stars of tomorrow, and even in recent years have continued to be able to do that. I kind of called an audible, bumped some guests that we had lined up when I realized that this was coming up this Saturday, and what's interesting to me is just live wrestling going on in the Northeast. It's been a long time since we've seen it. And as I mentioned to Joe in my interview, it occurred to me this week that this might be the first time in more than 25 years that I'll probably go a year without watching wrestling live. Unless, that is, I make the drive to New Jersey next week for the Super 8, which might happen. But we talk about that, the decision to put on the show. It was rescheduled a few times. Obviously, all kinds of concerns about running a live event indoors, which is what they're doing here in the Northeast. But he talks about some of the precautions that they've taken and other ways that you could see, even if you're not in the building, you could check it out live streaming. So stay tuned for that interview. Right now, let me tell you about the latest issue of Pro Wrestling Illustrated. It is one of our biggest, if not our biggest issue of the year. Yes, the 30th. Is that right? Yes, I believe that's right. The 30th annual PWI 500 started in 1991, so yes, here in 2020, it is the 30th installment. Jon Moxley, AEW champion, is on the cover. He is this year's #1 ranked wrestler in the PWI 500. Got to say, the reviews we've been getting so far for this issue have been very, very good. Absolutely, with a new leadership in place and PWI, a different tone, a different direction. With this year's list. I know it's caused some confusion, if only because fans are seeing women in there, and it hasn't been an out-and-out combination of the women's 100 and the PWI 500, but there was more latitude this year in allowing women onto the list. Certainly, if they were involved in a lot of intergender wrestling matches and found success there. It only made sense that women should receive the same credit as their male counterparts for wrestling the same competition. And lots of other, I think, new directions with the PWI 500, certainly kind of a sign of the times issue. And you don't want to miss it. Tons and tons of coverage of the 500 here in this issue. I counted up just my contributions to the magazine. I think I wrote something like 19 pages, which is just nuts when I think about it. But also tremendously proud now. Since 2007, I've been involved in the PWI 500. Every year when it comes in the mailbox, mine came this past week. Yeah, I'm just giddy like a kid flipping through it. This issue looks great. The cover is a little bit of a throwback to an old PWI 500 with Steve Austin on the cover. We kind of sort of had Moxley recreate it sort of loosely. And I was really thrilled to see the inside cover. Mox wearing a Pro Wrestling Illustrated t-shirt holding up the number one. So very cool. You don't want to miss this issue. Go to pwi-online.com. If you order it now, as I said, print issue is out, so you will have it delivered right to your mailbox. If you don't even want to wait that long, you could download the digital edition right away. And really the thing to do is to go ahead and subscribe and make sure you don't miss an issue going forward. We are in our busy season, as I like to say. There's the 500. We are now in the next couple of weeks going to put to bed our women's 100, kind of the female counterpart to the PWI 500. I hope to be interviewing this year's number one ranked women's wrestler this coming week. No spoilers here, but very excited about talking to her. And after this issue, we might have another surprise coming along the way. And then before you know it, we're doing the year-end awards, the achievement awards. So you don't want to miss it. I mean, again, even before I was with the magazines and I was just a fan, if I didn't have that much money, there were a few issues that I was sure to pick up every year. One was the 500. Another one was the achievement awards. And certainly now the women's 100 definitely belongs in that mix. So don't miss any of them. Go to pwi-online.com and pick it up right there on the website. You could also listen to the podcast. You can subscribe to the PWI Weekly, our digital newsletter, completely free, sent to your email inbox every week. What else can I tell you to do? Please follow us on social media at official PWI on Instagram and Twitter. We're also on Facebook. We're also on YouTube. We've got some T-shirts that you can pick up at ProWrestlingTees.com. The iconic PWI t-shirt like Mox is wearing in the latest PWI, but some other fun ones too. Also some new PWI 500 shirts that are a lot of fun. And what else? You could drop us a line here at pwi@capitalpublishing.com. That's for all things PWI. If you got something specifically for the podcast, you can send it to PWI Podcast at outlook.com. Right now, I'm going to take you to my discussion with Brian. I should mention, I had a little bit of technical difficulties. So, as they used to say, this conversation is picked up in progress.
There were some high points for me that, honestly, I would say kind of saved the show for me. I mean, I would say the MJF Moxley main event was outstanding. I loved it. I thought it was an incredible match. And I think the two of those guys did an amazing job. One of the best finishes, personally, that I can remember seeing in a long time. And it was a great way to end the show because, as you notice, when a show ends really strong, sometimes it'll make you forgive a lot of the things that happened before it, and you don't always remember some of the sloppier stuff, like the tooth and nail match, shall we say, and things like that. It takes your mind off that. So overall, I mean, I enjoyed it. There were definitely some dead spots for me, but it did not meet the standard of what I've come to expect from AEW. I mean, I happen to really love their product, and it didn't meet the standard for me.
Yeah. So again, I think that this show more than others highlighted some of their worst tendencies, and I think AEW is at its weakest when it comes off as a company that is run by wrestlers, and the irony is that that's also its strength, right? But
yeah,
you sometimes you get the sense of here's a company that needs an editor, a real or somebody to kind of lay down the law and say, no, every match can't go 35 minutes, and just need some. I remember having this conversation with Gabe Sapolsky, who I guess that he's also in the news for kind of getting out of the wrestling business, but in the sort of heyday of Ring of Honor when he was still running things. And I went to a Ring of Honor show, and all good action. But I remember the main event going, goodness, it had to be 40 minutes. And it was a fine main event, but it was like a tag team. It was like a show on Long Island, like Daniel Bryan and maybe Eric Stevens versus, I don't know who else. I mean, it was just like not that big a deal. Endless, and just near fall after near fall after big move, near fall, big move, near fall. And just after a while, I was so numb, like it, and you get to the point that's like, all right, just get this over with. And to me, that's indie wrestling kind of at its worst. And AEW at its worst shows some of those tendencies. And I felt some of that throughout the night. When you've got matches that just don't need to go 30 minutes, almost everything did. The show in total with the pre-show, I think, was close to 5 hours. Even WWE's not doing that these days. So did you feel any of that again, maybe needed some editing?
Yeah, definitely. It's funny. It is some of those indie tendencies kind of on a larger scale where you almost feel like there's only one type of match that they know how to put on. It's like, well, every match has to be the end of the world, like you said, with 45 near falls and one stuff. And I think as an older fan with perspective, I blame Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels for this because I feel like as a WWF fan, that was the beginning of seeing these like really expecting to see on a big show these huge marathon athletic type of wrestling matches where, sure, if you were watching in other territories, you certainly saw more of that. But on a national level with the WWF, you didn't really get that with Hogan and Savage and the Warrior, especially Warrior and Hogan and things like that. You didn't get that kind of match. You got a match or Andre the Giant. It was more a spectacle of a match in the main event. So I think the fans came to expect that. And now it's gotten to the point where, like you say, every match is like everybody's trying to put on this incredible, amazing clinic and show you every move that they have. There is a lot of that. And one thing I want to point out with AEW is one thing I still have an issue with is their tag team matches are it's just chaos every time. And I'm not trying to sound like an old fart, but the tag team matches they're very hard to follow because it's just the in and out of the ring, the psychology, nobody's enforcing the 5 count, which they've turned into a 10 count on double teaming. Nobody's even enforcing it. There's no tag ropes to keep guys in the corner. It's just one giant schmoz, and you get a little tired of seeing that. Like with the Dark Order 6-man tag, I'll be very frank, I'm zoning out watching that, and then even the Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy Young Bucks, that was the tag match that a lot of people were high on. I had the same issues with that. I did enjoy the FTR, the tag title match with Hangman Page and Kenny Omega. I thought that was well put together. But they have in my estimation, they have a tag team problem, not in the sense of their division because they have strong talent, but in the actual matches they're putting on. They really, whoever is agenting and producing that's a thing that needs to be worked on because, yeah, it just makes the show sloppy and messy and overly long in my.
It's interesting because I think they look at their division as one of their strengths. And, it's clear that they certainly prioritize tag team wrestling over WWE, and they take pride in it. I mean, I think they think of themselves as kind of, a 1987 Crockett kind of a territory where you had all these amazing teams, the Midnight Express, and the Rock and Roll Express, and there is a lot of that going on. But I think you touch on something which is with that many people in the ring at the same time, some of those tendencies get even exaggerated, even worse, because now you got 4 guys who have to get their in and it just tends to sort of unravel. And there's the potential for these really incredible spots and maneuvers because you got four guys, you can do all kinds of wacky teamwork. But yeah, it just sort of, I don't know. And to me, I didn't love John Moxley and MJF. I thought it was fine, but I think my reaction to that match, and I'm sort of thinking about this as we talk, probably had a lot to do with what we saw throughout the night, which is exactly what I'm describing and why you don't do it. I was sort of deadened by the end of the night, and when and MJF, I think he takes pride in being kind of an old school wrestler. So that match started off. It wasn't long before he slapped the chin lock on, and it was a pretty standard wrestling match throughout, and a good one. But I was sort of numbed by 4 hours of like the Young Bucks and again all these kind of high spot artists throughout the night. It's hard to put on just kind of a standard wrestling match at the end of that to punctuate it all.
This is where I do think that the bookers and promoters of the past were very wise in the way that they would set up shows. I mean, this is something that I think died probably in the Attitude Era, but where the thinking was your show is building. It's building and building and building till you get to the end. So like in the early matches, you would never see even guys go outside the ring, or the first couple of matches very often wouldn't even be that competitive. It might be a squash or a relative squash, and things would slowly build as the show went on, and then you'd see, oh my God, there might be a chair shot or something, and by the time you got to the main event, all the stops were pulled out. Those guys could do whatever they wanted to put on the best performance because that was the match that everybody came to see more than anything else. And now it seems to be much more like a package deal. The main event obviously is still the most important match usually, but it's much more like it's just another match on the card than it used to be. And so the result is, yes, you get kind of like inundated and overwhelmed, whereas the older way of doing things, of building and building and building, it reduces that, where you actually have a crowd that's more excited by the end of the night instead of having the wind out of their sails by the end of the night. That's the downside of doing it this way, of hitting people with just too much stuff. Too much.
What did you think of some of the more kind of sports entertainment fare throughout the night, whether it was the tooth and nail match in the dentist's office or Jericho and Orange Cassidy with the mimosa, the pool of mimosa? I like that a little more I like that a lot more than the tooth and nail match. But there is something to be said about kind of the tone, and I think some people would you could kind of get whiplash from one hand, watching this 35-minute match between FTR and Page and Omega, and then just a few minutes later seeing two guys trying to dunk each other in a pool. Is there room for all of it? Does some of it go too far?
I think there is room for changes in tone. In fact, I think it's kind of crucial and important because it takes away from that numbing factor and that overwhelming factor. If you have, a different tone as the show goes on, you have a match that's more lighthearted and a match that's more serious. I think that's a good thing, but again, the mileage may vary and the results may vary. So I'm with you a little bit in the sense that I enjoyed the Jericho Orange Cassidy stuff a lot more than I did the tooth and nail stuff, because I think part of it is carried, for me anyway, on the personality of the participants. And for me, Jericho can do no wrong as far as I'm concerned. Like he can do it all. He can do a match with Cody on the pay-per-view where it's like this intense, like old school wrestling main event. And then he can do this where he's getting dunked in a vat of mimosa, and it still works because you're engaged by him, and you're also engaged by Orange Cassidy in a very different kind of way, who it's just such a unique character, and it makes it fun to watch, and you can forgive it more. I know it's a negative kind of term to use, but you could kind of forgive it more because in spite of yourself, you're actually laughing and being entertained. At least I am. Whereas with the match in the dentist's office, it's just, I don't know. It's one of those where again, where you go to Twitter and you're wondering, like, is everybody loving this? What's going on? Is this is clearly wrestle crap by any 1990s definition. For me, like, the killer for me is, the dumb stuff like, Big Swole is literally trying to murder Britt Baker with a power drill. And the referee just standing there, just calling it like it's like a sleeper hold. I mean, I don't care what rules of a wrestling match you've got, you can't attempt to drill a hole in someone's head and have me believe that what I'm watching is real in any way, shape, or form. That kind of stuff just kills it for me. That match was definitely the worst tendency of these cinematic matches for sure.
Yeah, and you'd think some of the people in power over there, Tony Khan, who's very much a student of wrestling, would know better. I mean, this feels like the conversation we're having is a conversation that we'd have with him, and he'd agree. So I don't know. It's sometimes maybe in the moment people pitch things, you don't want to turn them down. They sound good on paper, and in execution they don't work out. I think what probably got more buzz coming out of the show than anything else, you touched on it, was the Matt Hardy match and the really scary incident with him taking that bump, apparently being knocked out, unconscious for several seconds, and the match being called off and then restarted. And, a very bad look, I think, for AEW. Thankfully, the word is it wasn't all that serious. And in the end, I guess there's even a dispute whether he actually had a concussion or not. But it looks like everybody's okay. But very much concerning and disheartening that in 2020 you'd still see something like that. That kind of show must go on mentality. And again, I think this goes back to what we were just talking about. This feels like what happens when wrestlers are running the place, because I get a wrestler wanting to go on. And throughout history, I feel like when wrestlers have shown that toughness, it's been held up as like this virtue. Think about Triple H wrestling with the torn quad and finishing the match and taking the walls of Jericho on the table, and that sort of made him this hero. And so I think that's a wrestler's mentality. So I'm not surprised that Matt would want to go on, but where is that person to say absolutely not? We are stopping this right now. It doesn't matter if you think you're okay or not. And I think a lot of people were hoping to see that, and I think it hurts AEW in the eyes of some fans that they didn't make that call.
Yeah, that is something that would not have happened on a WWE show, in my view. That would have been the point where they would have stepped in. And it did come across as an amateur hour kind of thing, like who is making the decisions here? You've already decided, we saw the referee do the cross arm maneuver, which I know sometimes they do it as a work, but I mean, clearly this was real, where they're calling someone in and they're stopping the match. And then in this confusing moment, especially for the viewers at home, they're just wandering through the arena. Matt Hardy is clearly disoriented. And then the match just continues once they get inside, to the point where the announcers were trying to do damage control for the rest of the show, like explain what had just happened and fill people in. And that was a mess. And I do think that it really hurt the rest of the show. I think it had this weird impact on the live audience where it took a lot of the enthusiasm out. And I think that was partly responsible for the kind of lack of energy later in the show.
Yeah. And I think, you touched on it. I think it's so important that AEW doesn't allow for those moments where you can draw the comparison with WWE and determine that, well, WWE absolutely does this better. Right. And I think that was that moment. I think a lot of people thought that, like, well, this wouldn't happen in WWE. And as much as they can, they've got to avoid situations like that where they look like sort of the Bush League, counterpart to the Major League WWE. One other quick item I wanted to touch on with you. They got some buzz in recent days, and it was WWE putting out this statement saying that going forward, they would be limiting how much wrestlers could essentially go into business on their own. And this evolved over a few days as kind of clarity came out and what was covered and what wasn't covered. But basically, the discussion had to do with certain endorsements, Twitch channels, things like that. I guess WWE's viewpoint is, we're trying to make some of these deals as a company and kind of leverage the strength of the brand, and it undercuts them when some of these wrestlers are making their own kind of side deals. The flip side of that is, of course, they're independent contractors, or at least they're purported to be independent contractors. A lot of people drew comparisons with what we saw in UFC years ago, where they told fighters that you couldn't advertise on your trunks anymore. It was a staple of UFC fights for years. At the end of the beginning of the fight and the end of the fight, the corners would come out with these big banners and to be promoting some kind of energy drink or something like that. And their trunks would be covered with all these logos. And UFC put a stop to that when they made a deal with Reebok. And it cost a lot of fighters a lot of money. And I would think it could potentially cost a lot of WWE a talent a lot of money. Do you think, you worked there for a number of years, you know how they operate? Do you understand WWE's side of this, why maybe they wouldn't be totally okay with some of these side deals?
Well, their side of it is very easy to understand because it's a very greedy side. So, I mean, we can understand why, because they're trying to kind of take as much as they can out of their talent. I mean, you can go all the way back to Sergeant Slaughter and G.I. Joe. I mean, that was the reason that he left the WWF when he was on fire, potentially even as big or bigger than Hogan in '84. And he bailed because they wanted his G.I. Joe money. And he was like, no, I made this deal myself. I am a bankable character. And Vince was like, you belong to us. We created you, and which is even arguable that they did that. So, I mean, this is a longstanding thing with that company. While I don't agree with it, I will say that I definitely saw it coming when I saw how talent was kind of having a field day on, TikTok and Twitch and things like that. And not only even for money reasons, but doing things that were very contradictory to their characters or personas and things like that. I'm sure that Vince was not thrilled with that. And I think that was part of the decision too, to try to control the product and control the way the talent is presented. I don't agree with the move. I really don't understand how they have a leg to stand on doing it, but I mean, I'm not a legal expert. I think things like this and the recent thing we heard about where they're trying to claim that they own the rights to them using their real names in the wrestling business. You see things like that and you think, could this be a tipping point where they finally get together and decide to look into unionization or doing something about this? I mean, there was something that happened on Twitter recently or online where Andrew Yang, who is a lot of people know he's a big wrestling fan. He has been going on for a while now about some of these ridiculous practices and how they do violate the whole independent contractor thing. And there was an exchange online between Andrew Yang and Leah Thompson, the actress from Back to the Future, many people may know, who is, I believe, the president or one of the top people in the Screen Actors Guild, who was very interested in this and kind of looking at it like going, seriously, they're doing this, almost as if something could happen out of this. I mean, that may be overly optimistic, but it's putting WWE on radars that they don't want to be on. If you've got like legit mainstream politicians and the Screen Actors Guild or other guilds and unions saying, what's going on over there? What are these people doing? That's not going to end well for them at all. So, and now that they have a viable alternative of a place to go work on top of everything else, I mean, it may be time to really let go of that old chestnut.
Yeah, it really seemed foolish, and even understanding their motivations, I feel like it could have been handled so much better. And as far as Andrew Yang, it's worth noting that he may very well have an important role in a Joe Biden administration. So it might be a 180-degree shift for WWE from kind of being in bed with the president of the United States to having a wrestling fan who might wield some power. And maybe give them some grief that they haven't had in a while. But I thought, again, and even being a little sympathetic to WWE's side of like, you create these characters, you sort of foster them, and then you got some knuckleheads going on Twitch or Cameo and maybe saying more than they should about some stuff. I understand that, and I understand wanting to rein them in. I think there was a more graceful way to do this, which is, put out a memo about some standards, right? I remember some years back, I think they've eased off of this, but you remember when you're probably working there at the time, when they instituted a dress code.
Yeah.
And there was some, I think, people not happy about that, because all of a sudden you go from being able to travel in whatever sweats and now they're asking you to put on a shirt and tie. But there were a lot of people who understood WWE's side of that, is that you're trying to put forth kind of a professional look, and maybe they overdid it. But the point is, WWE does have a side to this. Where I think they came off bad was kind of putting down this hammer and sort of saying, no, you cannot do this. And even to the point, as you touched on, raising question as to whether they own their own names. And I think they ended up pulling back some on that. But I just think this would have been better handled by putting forth, here are some standards, here are some guidelines that we urge you to follow. Be mindful of this, that, and this. And not necessarily make it look like you're trying to take money out of their pockets.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if there's more to this than we had heard. If maybe there were things leading up to this that aren't publicly known. I mean, maybe I'm giving them too much of the benefit of the doubt, but maybe there was a memo, maybe there were standards, maybe there was an effort to say, okay, guys, look, just here's some guidelines. And maybe those things were being ignored or flouted. I mean, who knows? It is a very, very blunt and wrong-headed way to approach this, especially if there was no lead up to this. And it seemed to catch a lot of the talent by surprise. There were some people that just couldn't hold back on social media and things, and you can clearly see the frustration of, I think Paige, for example, did something where she changed the name of her Twitch page, and she tweeted something out to the effect of like, I don't think so, or something like that, where she was clearly pissed off about what had happened.
Yeah. I think about Xavier Woods, and he's huge on Twitch, right? And he's got that.
He's one of the main reasons why this happened, actually.
Yeah. So does this affect him too? I mean, is up, down a thing of the past?
I would imagine. I mean, I think so. I think that was one of the main reasons for this even happening, was them looking at that and going, are we really okay with having these guys do this? I think that was one of the top causes for this.
Wow. Yeah. Because I got to think that's a huge source of revenue for him. Maybe not as much as he's making from WWE, but it's probably pretty comparable. And to tell a guy who doesn't factor into, well, right now he's I guess on the sidelines, but even when he's active, doesn't factor that much into your plans, that you can't do this anymore. Man, that's a good way to run some talent off, I would think. And AEW wasted no time and all out, having some fun with it and making it clear, by all, we invite all this stuff. Come on down, and then you can do whatever you want over here. So, yeah. All right, Brian, don't want to keep you too long. Thank you so much for chatting. We will catch up again in a couple weeks.
All right, Al, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure as always.
Want to thank my co-host, Brian Solomon, once again for a good talk. Right now, here's another good talk I had with the owner of the East Coast Wrestling Association, the ECWA. This coming Saturday, September 19th, they are putting on the 24th annual ECWA Super 8 tournament. You can watch it streaming at independentwrestling.tv. That's an over-the-top streaming network for lots of great indie shows. That's if you can't be there in person. If you can be there in person and you haven't caught wrestling in a long, long time in person, you can go over to ecwawrestling.com for information about tickets. They're going to be running limited capacity, so get yours before they are gone. Here, once again, is the owner of the ECWA, Joe Zanolle. And the reason I Northeast to have some live wrestling. When this came up on my Facebook feed is coming up, I was like, wow, wrestling. And I want to talk to you a bit about the decision to go forward. I think some people were surprised. Myself included to hear that there is even going to be a show. And a little bit of history to Super 8 and just sort of the particulars of putting on a show right now. So let me ask you about that. I mean, have you guys been dark since, the COVID outbreak?
Yeah, we have. And it is kind of weird. The show's coming up, kind of crept up. We postponed it once or twice. It was usually we had the Super 8 in April. So last show we had was January. And we were supposed to, I believe, have March and April. And, March got canceled. And, when everything happened, we thought nobody knew. Was this going to be 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 2 months? Who knows? And, here we are in September. So, yeah, we haven't had a show since January. We had a show last December also. So it's been a while. The show's actually in Morganville, New Jersey. I know on Facebook. Yeah, on Facebook, for some reason, Marlborough comes up when you put that address in, but the venue's the Dugout in Morganville, New Jersey. And, the decision to have the show, I mean, it's been wait and see this whole time. Right. Every day something changes, but I think some of the things that we're doing and some of the options that we have for this show, it's going to make it a show that everybody could see, even if they're not comfortable coming in person. In person, there's going to be a limit. I believe we're at 20% now in New Jersey, or 25%, based on the capacity of the building. So everyone needs to wear a mask. There's going to be sanitation stations. The seats will be socially distanced. All the performers, everybody's going to have a mask on except for the performers while they're performing, obviously. You come to the show live. I think there's a certain amount of people that want to go and want to see something live, and there's still some others that maybe have some trepidation. And then there's also people that don't live in the area. So we're also going to be broadcasting it on Independent Wrestling TV. I don't know if you're familiar with that site, but they have a lot of different independent wrestling promotions on there. So you can watch the show for free with the cost of the membership. I think it's $10 a month. So if you want to see the Super 8, you pay the $10 a month. You watch the Super 8, watch some other wrestling. If you're not happy, you can cancel any time. So it kind of meets all the different needs of the fans that want to see the Super 8, whether, they want to come in person, or maybe they're a little leery about coming in person, or they're not in the area. So there's, a couple different ways you can see it, but we're definitely going to have it set up as safe as possible for the people that are there in person.
I would think a couple of things going on. I imagine that there are some of your regular fans that maybe are still not comfortable about watching, getting together with people for a live event. But I imagine, to some extent, that might be offset by the fans, maybe myself included, depending on what I'm doing next week, who just, it's been a long time since you got to a wrestling show, especially if you're here in the Northeast, and the prospect of being able to see one, and one with some significance. I mean, this is, it's fair to say this is probably the biggest independent show in the Northeast since the outbreak. Not that there's been much of anything around here, but I don't know what would be bigger than Super 8. Certainly in the tri-state area since at least March. So are you expecting, maybe hoping to see some new faces that you don't usually see?
Well, I am, because of the venue change, for one. We were having it in Delaware. We were doing our shows in Delaware, but right now the state of Delaware has a combative sports commission, and they're still not taking applications for any shows to run. So we didn't have a choice where we couldn't run in Delaware. So we have Pennsylvania and we have Jersey, and we've been working with World One Wrestling. That's their home venue up there, the Dugout. So it just made sense to have it there. So I think, we may not see some of the regular fans that we normally would from Delaware. May see some new fans of, World One Wrestling in the area. Do I think it's the biggest event, since the outbreak? I mean, everybody has a different opinion. As far as history goes, I would say it would. I mean, 24 years, it's a long time, and there's a lot of guys that have been through it. I mean, there's guys that have made it big on TV that were in the Super 8 18, 20 years ago, So, and a lot of those guys, actually, this is a whole other tangent I won't get into, but really, I feel personally Ring of Honor was born out of the Super 8. I know Wrestling Observer talks a lot about the King of Indies with Low Key and Bryan Danielson, but all the Ring of Honor guys, the original guys, Doug Gentry and Gabe Sapolsky and Rob Feinstein, they were at those Super 8s in 2000, 2001, 2002, and they were filming. And I'd say 75% of the locker room on the first Ring of Honor show was from those first 3 years of the Super 8. So, it has a lot of history. It's changed over the years. The wrestling landscape has changed. The media has changed. When Jim Kettner ran it, he used to get videotapes from guys. You know what I mean? Looking to be in the tournament, where now you just go on your phone and you could see the guys. So back then it was easier, I guess to say, to kayfabe, where if you brought somebody in. I remember talking to Austin Aries in 2011. We had him, and he came in 2004. So when I talked to him in 2011 and booked him, he said he had never been outside of his home state of Minnesota to wrestle before the first Super 8 in 2004. So back then, no one had a way, unless they were tape trading, had a way of knowing these guys. It's a little bit different now. It's a little bit different ball game, but we still try to keep the same spirit of, 8 guys, 8 good guys, 8 guys that maybe you've heard of, maybe you haven't, and giving them a chance to show what they can do to hopefully and potentially a bigger audience.
Yeah.
So.
For people who don't know what the Super 8 is, it is, courtesy of one of the most prestigious independent wrestling tournaments in the sport. They've been around for 24 years. I just pulled up the Wikipedia entry for it, and forget about all the contestants, just the winners reads like a who's who of stars. I mean, from Christopher Daniels back in 2000, Low Key in 2001, Paul London, Pete Williams, Davey Richards, Jeremy Lin, and Austin Creed, who is Xavier Woods, of course, Austin Ciampa, Papa Buddy of mine, and Matt Cross, Jason Kincaid. So, I mean, so many guys, premiers have really kind of been taken to that next level from this tournament. So, very much the case that, like, if and it's a little bit of a cliche, but so often you're sold on, like, watching NXT or Ring of Honor, or as these are the future headliners of tomorrow. But if you want to take it even a step earlier than that, and really see guys sort of budding in their infancy of future stardom, this is a good place to start. So in putting that list together every year, how do you do it? I mean, is it easy enough? I mean, you find that wrestlers, independent wrestlers, are still very interested in being part of this tournament, or is the reality that's it's not what it was 20 years ago? The landscape's changed. Is it maybe a tougher sell to get?
I will say, I think it's a little bit of both. I'll be honest. I think a lot of the name value and the prestige of it, thanks to you guys. I don't know if you remember, I used to be a photographer for PWI magazine, but so many of the guys know the tournament from PWI. And, when you're looking to be a star and you're just thinking and dreaming about it, you're looking at the first big thing you could do. And it's like, wow, here's 8 guys. I've never really heard of them, but their pictures are in the magazine. And, I hear about this all the time. So, it depends. Like I said, things have changed a bit back in 2000. There were not a lot of independent wrestling promotions that are around today. It wasn't the social media. It wasn't the internet. So it was definitely less competition back then, and you had to pick of the litter, so it's a little bit different today. But we do have people, that definitely, I'll tell you one guy that wanted to be in it. I talked to him a couple years, and we were never able to get him in, and I wish I had, was Timothy Thatcher. He knew about the tournament. He really wanted to be in, talked to him a couple years. And, I see he's doing good, so I'm glad he's doing good. But, somebody like Timothy Thatcher, Michael Elgin before, a lot of guys, had talked to about being in it, just didn't work out. Right before he went to Japan, Kenny Omega. So, there's a lot of promotions. There's a lot of, I don't know that I want to say death match promotions. I guess there is more death match stuff from the indies. I don't know. In this area, in New Jersey area, I guess. Which is interesting because we have Matt Tremont in this tournament, which is something I never thought we would, but it was something different, a new idea. I know Matt does not, I guess, fit the typical profile of a Super 8 competitor, but he's hanging up his boots. He's been doing a farewell tour, and it's something he always wanted to do. And I thought this was perfect timing. He's on his farewell tour. He's wrestled in ECWA a few times. We had there was a feud with the former owner, Mike Tartaglia, the boss. It was Team Boss versus Team CZW. Matt's a great guy, one of the nicest guys to have in the locker room and work with. But the switch flips when he gets in the ring. But he wanted to show people he's not just a deathmatch wrestler. So, I'm happy to have him this year. Interesting to see how he fits in with the other guys. And I think we have a pretty eclectic group of guys. But basically, we try to reach out to guys as early as possible. Pre-pandemic, a lot of shows and guys are booked up far in advance. But I try to find guys that obviously are good, guys that I think have potential, that when I look at them and say, I could see this guy winning and being on WWE TV in 10 years. And that's about it. We have people that will contact us every year. We contact people, and we just try to get an interesting group. It's not always the group that I want, because of other bookings and stuff like that, but it always winds up being a great show. We still keep all the old traditions to it. We do at the beginning of the show, we do a medal ceremony. At the end of the night, we have all the other competitors come out and congratulate the winner. So I try to keep the format and everything like that pretty much the same.
Right. So was this a group largely in place already before the pandemic? I mean, when this show was scheduled to be back in whatever, February, March.
Right. I will say for the most part, I know, Ricky Reyes is taking a sabbatical. He's taking some time off for personal reasons. But for the most part, I'd say, actually, Matt was a replacement, too. We were supposed to have, he was working in TNA. And I'm going to think Jake something. He was supposed to be in it, but he had to cancel out because of, I guess, an agreement with TNA or Impact that he couldn't make it. So, yeah, that is something that happens every year. Kettner used to announce the 8th the month before, and I think he used to do that to avoid the cancellations. But the other side of the coin is we want time to promote it, so it's kind of a catch-22. You know what I mean? announce it early to promote, then you have to announce, who got hurt, who got signed, whatever. But you don't want to wait too late either. But I think, it's still, I actually think it's a plus as far as, Matt being in over Jake something. Jake's pretty good, but I think the timing of Matt retiring and everything fits better in the tournament. So.
Did you find that it was a hard sell at all to get some wrestlers to be on the show because of concerns of the coronavirus, or the flip side is everybody itching to get back to work?
I think the guys are itching. We told them, we sent a late email out to the people saying, hey, listen, if anybody is uncomfortable at this point, let us know. Whoever's there, I want them to be there because they want to be there. Obviously, we're going to do everything we can to keep it safe. But no, I think the guys are itching to work. That's definitely. Not that they're not taking precautions or, not caring, but I mean that this is their life. You know what I mean? This is what they do. So.
Yeah. Was it? I know it's been delayed a bunch of times, but how touch and go did it get? Was there a point where it was looking like this show would not happen this year, or even taking a step further? We know that there are companies, not just in wrestling, in all lines of business, that have gone under because of the pandemic. Did you ever get to that point, close to that point?
Well, I don't, as far as the company continuing, I don't think that was ever a worry. As far as the show happening this year, unfortunately, I never used to watch the news. Now I'm addicted to it, and I need to get off of it. But yeah, every day, my antenna would go up and say, well, what's going on now? And being in New Jersey, and the show's in New Jersey, I guess it was back in June, the governor said they were going to open restaurants. Restaurants went out and bought all this food, and 3 days later he said, nah, forget it. So you definitely worry about that happening. I guess, in early summer, as the show got closer, got a little bit more confident. But yeah, all through the summer, I was worrying. Just, watch the news. You never know. You never know what's going to happen the next day. But it was.
Did they get any grief, any negative feedback from people thinking that it should have put the show on?
No, we haven't. And I mean, I think, listen, I think not only with this show, I think with other things too, whatever it might be, restaurants, whatever, if it's there, you're going there, you obviously know, I guess, potential risk, you don't have to go. And if you don't want to go, you can watch it at home. So we haven't experienced anything, any negative that I know of. Who knows? Sometimes there's so much on social media and comments, you miss something here or there, but nothing that I can recall.
Yeah. This is going to be an indoor venue, right?
Yeah, it's indoor, but we also had the possibility of having an outdoor too in the event something happens last minute. So
let me ask you about that. I mean, would you have preferred to do it outdoor? Was there a reason he couldn't be outdoor? I mean, I think that would reduce some concerns about putting on a wrestling show if you could do it outside.
Right. Well, the number one thing without having an outdoor is time and lighting. If you don't have the lights, at nighttime, it's going to be a problem. And obviously you can have it in the day, but it's a little bit more feasible to have it nighttime, obviously, with people with work and everything like that. So,
I guess beyond that, if it rains, there goes your show, right?
Right, yeah. So it's a tricky thing, you know what I mean? But as far as people coming, and if they're not comfortable coming, they can watch it on independent wrestling TV. All they got to do is join $10 a month.
Yeah.
They're not happy with it, they can cancel. And they sold the Super 8 for $10. So.
Yeah. Well, I got to find out how far this is from Long Island, where I'm at. But
Right.
I'm itching to go to a show as well. I was just thinking about this the other day, but this year is fixing to be the first year in more than 25 years that I have not seen a wrestling show in person.
Wow. Yeah.
That was like back in December. So
Yeah.
only to say I saw a show this year, I might be making that drive. But one thing that you kind of touched on, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, ECWA, and particularly Super 8's got a long history. For a number of years, it was sort of the unofficial reunion of the Pro Wrestling Illustrated staff every year. Because we are spread out, I'd say concentrated in the Northeast, but spread all over the place, and people used to kind of converge for the Super 8. I tried a couple of times. I don't know if you remember in person, but I was there at that 2011 one. I think that was the one where I remember the finale.
Yeah, we did meet.
And Adam Cole. I think was, and to this day, I tell the story of that night going out to eat with all those guys, Adam Cole, and Ciampa. I remember there was a UFC show on
Right.
And hanging out with those guys and being around Adam Cole and noticing how small he was, and just thinking, this guy's never going to become anything. He's so good.
Yeah, you never know. You never know.
And Tommaso,
and that's one of the great things about the Super 8 that year too, was Austin Aries having him come back.
Right. I remember that.
And I said, when you started, when he didn't win in 2004. I know how you mentioned all the winners, but he lost the finals. But people were talking about him after that match, even though he didn't win. And next thing you knew, he was, Ring of Honor. So, I wanted him to come back and try to give the rub to somebody, which in the semifinals, Adam Cole defeated him and then went to the finals. So it was kind of like we had Ciampa win the tournament, but Adam Cole beat Austin Aries in the process. So you kind of try to spread the wealth on highlighting these guys and what they can do. But that was a good one. A lot of great guys were on that show.
What I remember about that was I think Brady was with Austin that year. He was driving.
Yeah.
And I remember him out to dinner that night, and he was just sort of despondent. He was like really kind of bummed out.
He was ready. He was ready to quit.
I remember that he talked about it, and he's just like, nothing's really, been at this for so long, and nothing's really connecting. This was after WWE had rejected his tape.
Right.
And, he was so bummed out, and I think by the end of that year, he was TNA World Champion, I think. And then before long was working at WWE, working at WrestleMania. So
when I booked him on the phone, he had said that. He said, I'm probably not going to be working much longer. He said, I got a job. He said, I'll probably still work locally, in Minnesota and stuff like that. But, so that might have been another reason he did it too, to come back and, try to help somebody else out too. But, he still had life in him after that. So, I don't know if he's doing anything now, but I think he's, pretty much done what he wanted to do. So.
What more could you do? What a career that he had, sure.
Right.
I imagine there's a lot of pride in helping identify these guys who went on to become something and having a hand in that. But is it also pressure that, like, it's almost like being recording the studio executive who has the pressure to discover the next big thing, and sometimes you pinpoint someone, this is going to be it, this is going to be the next hot act, and then they flop, and they never make it. The reality is not everybody who has won the Super 8 or even been in the finals has gone on to have the biggest career. But you got amazing, your batting average is really, really good. But is that a point of pressure for you every year, that your instincts are right, that you've pinpointed some piece of talent, that you see something in and you believe it's going to make it a career?
I guess for me personally, I always like to think that the guys come out of it better than when they went in. I don't know that I feel pressure. Again, when you go back to when Kettner in the early 2000s, again, it was a different ball game because you didn't have the social media. There weren't a lot of independents and stuff like that. So I look at it like you had more of the pick of litter of the guys. Now there's more places for guys to work. There's more places for them to be seen on social media. But if you look to, let's see, 2018, we had Richard Holiday win. I think he's got a pretty decent name for himself. Anthony Green, I think he signed with NXT now. Richards with MLW. So, yeah, some of the guys, and look, I'm not saying we made these guys or whatever, but if it can help them in any way to get a buzz coming out and getting somebody new to look at them. I mean, back that 2011 tournament that you went to, I talked to Tommaso and Cole, and they were doing Ring of Honor at that point, but they were very earlier in their career. And, I think it gave a chance for the people of Ring of Honor to see, all right, well, we got these two new young guys that are kind of on the bottom right now. Now they're watching what they can do in a main event. You know what I mean? So, I don't want to say so much pressure. I actually just personally, for me, if somebody comes in and gets a buzz coming out, like say somebody like Richard Holiday did or whatever, I'm just, just happy for the guy and happy that, he can go on and, try to go to the next step, use it as a building block.
Yeah. Well, Joe, thanks so much for talking. Excited for the show coming up. Good to have wrestling back in the Northeast, independent wrestling. And again, I mean, if you're a fan in the New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania area, and you're waiting on that next show to go to, it might be a long time before a WWE, Ring of Honor, or AEW, everybody comes
to. Winter's coming up, flu season, so who knows?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I got tickets to WrestleMania for one, but also the AEW show that was supposed to be in Newark, which was going to be their War Games match, and all those things fell through the cracks. So I'd be lying if I said I was a little uneasy about going to like a live event with a lot of people indoors. Right. But I trust that everybody's going to do the right thing.
And again, if anybody that's not comfortable, I ask you could still watch it on independent wrestling TV. Two ways you could support it. So ECWA wrestling.com, you can go in there for all the information, tickets, and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah. All right, Joe, thank you so much for talking. I appreciate it. That's not the show.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.
Have a good one.